This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by the Virginia Education Association. An investment in teachers today will pay dividends tomorrow. Dignity Memorial. The Dignity Network provides professional and compassionate funeral, memorial, cremation, and cemetery services throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association for jobs, the economy, and public health, committed to advancing health and economic opportunity for all Virginians. Virginia Tourism Corporation, promoting why Virginia is for lovers, lovers of wine and craft beers, the outdoors, beaches, history, music, and more. Fall in love with Virginia at virginia.org. Additional support provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond. A very special welcome back to Secretary Atif Carney, Secretary of Education. We're having a conversation right after the governor's announced his budget to the Joint Money Committees. Our viewers are seeing it here in early January, just as the session is underway. And really interested in having you highlight whether higher ed, secondary, but the education portions of the budget.
David, thank you so much. As you know, this is the second time on the show. The first time I was here with Dr. Healy, and we were just getting ready for a tour all across the Commonwealth, and we hadn't hit the road just yet. So the last year, we've been spending a lot of time on the road listening to Virginians about their needs, and I'm very excited. The governor has prioritized education. He talked about it when he was campaigning for governor. He's talked about it as the last year he's been in office. The First Lady really values education as well, and as you can see, that this budget, he's really prioritized education. I'm very, very excited about the announcements that he made in front of the Joint Money Committees earlier today, and we wanted to come and talk about that and share that a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on is early education. As you know, the First Lady, through her work through the Children's Cabinet, she chairs the Children's Cabinet, and there are a variety of work groups within the Children's Cabinet. So she's really dedicated to early education. In our personal opinion, but the best way to close the achievement gap is to really focus on early education. So the governor proposed almost $10 million to maintain the slots for Virginia preschool, public school slots for our at-risk children for 4-year-olds because the federal funding is going to be coming to an end next year, so that's a big investment, and we're very excited about that. And in addition to that, the governor has a lot of other things that he's proposed in the budget as far as education is related, and one of the major items was a 5% pay increase for teachers and support staff. And that particular item, currently in the budget it was 3%, and the governor wanted to add another additional 2%, which is equivalent to about $88 million. So if that were to go through the General Assembly, this would be the largest pay increase for teachers in 15 years.
I know there's been a great deal of excitement about that among teachers and those who support education.
Right, folks are very excited about it. We have, teacher retention is a concern for us in the Commonwealth. Throughout the nation, teachers are demanding for, more adequate salary increases. But in Virginia, we've been really proactive, and the governor has been proactive in really addressing this issue. So I'm very grateful to work for a governor who really realizes this and really values the work and the dedication the teachers show, because they are the ones on the front lines really working with our children and to really create.
As a former school teacher, you know that. You know that.
Absolutely.
Colleagues.
Also, as we were traveling the Commonwealth, going to a lot of schools and talking to school administrators and teachers and family members and students. There are a lot of aging school buildings in the Commonwealth. I went to a school that was built in 1909. So we have have to focus on some capital projects as well, and there's been a backlog. So the governor has also proposed an $80 million in low interest loans to really dedicate towards addressing some of the pending projects. So that is one area that he's also proposed, and again we're hoping that it makes it to the General Assembly session. Additionally, we were very fortunate to have extra revenues from the lottery money, and as you know, the lottery money goes all through K-12 education. So he used the extra revenue, $35 million is going to be added to the at-risk add-on that is focused on things like wraparound services for at-risk students. Mm-hmm. And an additional $35 million is one-time per pupil funding for flexible spending that school divisions can spend as they see fit, because that's another thing we were hearing about from school divisions, that they want more flexibility with their dollars, so no strings attached funding. So we're very excited about that. And then one thing I'm very excited about, and as you know, I spoke at the School Counselors Association event, which in Hampton Roads, and thank you for arranging for that. Currently in the Commonwealth, if you look at our entire continuum, the ratio for school counselors to students is about 1 to 425. Through the work of the Children's Cabinet, there was a subgroup on student safety and school safety, which I chaired along with Secretary Brian Moran, the Secretary for Public Safety and Homeland Security. And we convened stakeholders from throughout the state in the education, in the healthcare, and the public safety field, and got a lot of great recommendations. And one of the major recommendations that came out of that work group was to take the American School Counselors Association's best prevailing practice recommendation, and our Board of Education that's done a lot of work in revising our standards of quality. They've also recommended that we take the school counselor ratio to make it to 1 to 250 per student. So that is what the governor is committed to as well, and that's why he's proposed a $36 million first-year installment in a 3-year plan to address that and get the school counselor ratios down to 1 to 250, one school counselor to 250 students. So I'm very excited about that as well. And then for our post-secondary education, the governor also proposed, and just at VCU, he had a press conference, and of course he included it in his budget announcement today, a $15.5 million need-based financial aid proposal to really focus on our first-generation students and our underserved Virginians who are looking for that affordable path to higher education. And then also our private institutions who also serve a lot of underserved Virginians, so he proposed a $5.2 million addition to the tuition assistance grant that our private institutions use to help with financial aid for students. So that combination is, really again focusing on our low income and our middle class families who are really struggling to provide an access to affordable higher education for their children. So this will help a lot of families. In addition to this, there are other smaller items that you'll be hearing about in the coming weeks that are included in the education budget. But I'm very excited because the governor focused on education and the environment and infrastructure. This is a very fiscally responsible budget. It's really well balanced, addressing multiple needs. And again, this is all the things that we heard about across the Commonwealth that what Virginians wanted to focus on. So I'm very, very excited for the proposals that he's put forward.
And the website that we'll be having on the screen will send people to the governor's site, and I'm sure they'll be able to read his remarks that he made to the joint money committees, and we'll also see about getting up on that site on the screen,
yes,
the portal to the budget, because it's really easy for people out throughout the Commonwealth, if they don't have a copy of that thick document in hand to go through it, but to get it online and to be able to.
No, we really appreciate that. And then if you go to governor.virginia.gov, I think that's displayed on the thing that has all the different press events that the governor's held talking about the individual items in the budget, and then also that will have more information if folks want more details on the budget itself. So, if you're in support of these budgets, we encourage Virginians to talk to their legislators and really support the governor's budget. And what I'm calling my personal bias is support the education budget.
Well, and certainly there were things about the environment, there were things about broadband, but I think that I'll be interested when people make an analysis of the entire budget that education is right at the top of what's being promoted by the governor in the budget. And as you were saying, if people are in support or have concerns, they should know that the legislative session moves very quickly in this short session.
It does.
And while they may be thanking the governor, they really need to be contacting their delegates and their senators, particularly those that serve on the committees that will deal with the budget.
Right, and we're optimistic because, again, just talking to folks and everything, there is, the economy is doing really well. We have, solid revenues to work with, and again, so this is a great opportunity, as the governor said, a unique opportunity for us to address multiple needs and use these one-time revenues to really focus on high-impact areas, and education is really a top priority, and he's done that in his proposals.
There's no surprise that it appears like you've enjoyed or are enjoying, not past tense, the role that you're serving in, and as we said before, I think we had the conversation here on This Week in Richmond, as far as we know, I believe the first Secretary of Education who's come from the public school system directly into that role.
Right, directly right out of the classroom.
Yes.
And serving in this role. Very fortunate, and it's been almost a year. And I have a great team, as you know, David. Holly Coy, Deputy Secretary for K-12, is here, and Fran Bradford, who is the Deputy Secretary for Higher Ed. Our entire team is phenomenal. But most importantly, I really, am grateful to work for a governor and a first lady who are just so passionate about education. They talk about it all the time. They are really dedicated to helping the future of the Commonwealth, leaving an even better Commonwealth behind. We have a strong tradition and a strong history in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and a great education system, and they want to build on that. So that's why I'm very excited as an educator and as a Virginian to really serve under the leadership of our governor.
Secretary Carney, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond in this short segment, giving a real synopsis of what's out there. We encourage our viewers to look up education bills, and they'll be able to do that too, as well as the budget.
Right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, David, as always.
We hear a great deal about childhood hunger in Virginia and around the nation, and we're delighted to have Claire Mansfield here, who's the state director of No Kid Hungry. I love that name. And you're working in the Commonwealth on this. Tell us about No Kid Hungry and in particular what's happening here in Virginia.
Sure. Well, No Kid Hungry is the only national campaign that's solely dedicated to ending childhood hunger in America. And so here in Virginia, we have been active since 2011, and we have actually been successful in seeing the rate of children who struggle with hunger drop from about 1 in 6 kids to 1 in 7 kids. So really meaningful progress over the past few years. Our goal really is to do what it says in the title, make sure that there's no kid that goes hungry here in the Commonwealth. And so we work with partners all across the state to try to make sure that happens by increasing awareness in and participation in the federal meal programs. So school breakfast, after school meals, and summer meals.
So one of the catchy names, I think, for part of it is Breakfast After the Bell.
Breakfast After the Bell,
and
yes.
I think that our viewers hopefully have heard about that, but if they aren't sure, what does it mean to have breakfast after the bell? Because you'd think that you'd do that before school starts.
Right, so traditionally school breakfast, when it's been served, has been served before the start of the school day. What we found is that unfortunately that creates some barriers for kids to access it, particularly sometimes the kids who need to access it the most. So maybe a school bus doesn't arrive on time or doesn't arrive early enough for a child to access breakfast if it's before the school day. delays at home might hinder that. And also it helps create sort of a stigma sometimes between the kids who have to go and eat breakfast before the start of the school day and maybe kids who don't necessarily need to access that. So what we found is that a really simple way to overcome those barriers is breakfast after the bell. And essentially what that does is it makes breakfast a part of the school day, the same way that lunch is a part of the school day. You know, if you are serving it before the start of the school day, there are kids that are going to miss out. But if you're serving it after the bell, then those kids are already there as part of class, and everyone can access breakfast.
Now, it's your state director, but if people were kind of visualizing a map of the Commonwealth, are there pockets where this isn't happening, or are there pockets where it is happening? Because I guess it's not every school district is doing this.
Well, not every school in Virginia is necessarily serving breakfast after the bell, but we've had really widespread success over the past couple of years talking with folks and educating folks about how these programs increase participation for students. So I wouldn't say there's any one pocket where we see a huge gap or any one pocket where we see huge success. We're having success everywhere, but we also know that there's need everywhere across the Commonwealth, whether that's urban, suburban, or rural, you know, anywhere from Fairfax to Bristol to Abingdon, across to Southeast, Halifax. You know, hunger for children, unfortunately, is an issue no matter where you go in Virginia.
I think our viewers are interested in this issue, and I know I am. And what can individuals do who live in different cities, different counties? If they go on your website, will they find out whether their county is doing it, or what's the how-to? Give us a tutorial.
Sure. We'll take a step back first and kind of let you know a little bit more about what we do. So we are really keen on developing partnerships across Virginia, and that's been the core to what we call the Virginia model, which is something that we actually advocate for nationally and for how to do this. So Virginia, as always, is a leader on this issue in ending childhood hunger. So No Kid Hungry Virginia goes and creates these partnerships. We have wonderful partnerships in the governor's office and the administration, which we've had since the beginning of the McAuliffe administration, when the former First Lady Dorothy McAuliffe really made this her issue. And we continue to have that with the Northam administration. We have staff who are embedded in the Department of Education, and so that really helps solidify our engagement and support of the department in administering these programs. We have developed relationships with school nutrition directors and school nutrition departments, principals, teachers, churches, Boys and Girls Clubs, WIC offices. So really becoming invested in the community and developing that partnership model has been key to our success. And that includes your viewers who are interested. I think one of the biggest things that folks can do really is to just learn more about your school nutrition department, what it does. These are folks who work really, really hard to feed children and prepare them and make sure they're ready to go into the classroom and learn. We talk about breakfast being an important meal of the day on a big testing day for those SOLs, but it's important for every test day that they have, every day that they're entering and learning and getting the knowledge that they're going to use for those SOLs. So just making sure that you know what your school nutrition department is doing. If you're a parent, encouraging your children to eat school meals. They are not only healthy and nutritious, but you'd be really excited about some of the meals and the opportunities that you see for kids, both in breakfast and lunch, summer meals, after school, the whole gamut.
What's the biggest barrier that you have to overcome to have this? Let's even take the breakfast after the bell to get that more widespread. I could speculate that one barrier might be, they might say, well, most of the kids in our school, wherever school X or Y or Z is, have breakfast. Or is it financial? Or what's the barrier that needs to be overcome?
Right. So the biggest barriers we see are a combination of financial implications, like you said, and that's not for the sustenance of the program, but sometimes just the startup costs of the program. So there might be equipment needs, for instance, that are necessary to get the ball rolling there. The other issue that we often see is just technical assistance. So figuring out how to make these programs run smoothly. Maybe you have different needs or different culture in your school or different school layouts. We work to come into a school and help folks figure out what are the best practices they can implement and how can we help solve just those little normal everyday problems that can sometimes be obstacles.
Because it'd be in the classroom, so that instead of in a cafeteria, I guess, isn't it? So are all the breakfasts after the bell? I've heard of some that are in classrooms.
Yes,
Yeah.
So breakfast in the classroom is the one that we promote the most because it has the highest participation, and you do indeed have children who have their breakfast served in the classroom. We also do grab and go to the classroom, so children may take a meal from the cafeteria or a kiosk located in a particular section of the school and take that to the classroom and eat that at the beginning of their classroom meal. And then for older kids, we also have what we call a second chance. So for those kids who are rolling out of bed in the morning, those teenagers aren't grabbing breakfast and aren't hungry maybe until an hour and a half into their day, they get that sort of second chance to come and grab breakfast between first and second period.
Well, I'll have to do some checking in personally on Henrico County, where I have 3 grandchildren who get breakfast at home, but I'm sure if it's available, they're grabbing a breakfast too.
They may be.
Because I mean, they seem to have a great appetite.
Yes, kids are bottomless pits.
And I think that, and to think of kids being hungry and sitting in school all day is something that should trouble us.
Yeah.
It really should.
You and I don't perform at our best when we're hungry during the day, and neither do children.
Now, and some of that partnership that you were describing, is there any partnership with people who are in the food business, or is there any way that in any community, if there's a manufacturer there that's manufacturing things, or is that only on the federal level, or what?
So there are regulations about how that works with the school nutrition department, but absolutely, I mean, if there is a restaurant or a corporation that would like to support the efforts of No Kid Hungry, we certainly have. Smithfield is a big one here in Virginia that supports our efforts.
I didn't want to mention them in case they weren't, but I thought that Smithfield was. Yeah.
And we have lots of others. I mean, we have local restaurants here in Richmond who support us significantly. So always open to developing those corporate partnerships as well to help support the kids.
Yeah, I could see where restaurants could even help, in a way, adopt a school or adopt some classrooms in a school and be able to, almost on a regular basis, to be able to help.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So the Children's Cabinet meeting, this is one of the issues that's dealt with in that cabinet.
Yeah, so food security and childhood nutrition in particular are a focus of the Children's Cabinet, and how can we make sure that more of our kids are getting access to the healthy and nutritious meals that they need. And so No Kid Hungry is a part of one of the work groups for the Children's Cabinet that is, again, working in partnership with just so many other organizations across the Commonwealth to make sure we fill that gap so that we can really get to a day when we can say there's no kid hungry.
Yeah, you made a statement a little bit earlier about Virginia being a leader. Or as you think of the other 49 states in this, and of course, I think it's a national nonprofit.
Yes.
And so how are we doing? I know we have room. If it's 1 in 7, we still have.
Yeah,
work.
I mean, obviously there's still a lot of room to grow. I don't, I'm not one to necessarily compare ourselves to other states, but you know, we know that our commitment is to Virginia's kids here, and then also making sure that we take our successes and share those best practices with other states, the same way we work to share best practices between communities here in Virginia.
Well, quite a few of our viewers are people that have cater events, and that catering, we need to talk to our caterers and make sure that they're involved too, because even with the regulations that are there, I'm sure there's some way they can be involved.
Well, school nutrition departments are really the best place and the first port of call to make sure that our kids are fed. But absolutely, there's a lot of other organizations and groups that are committed to ending hunger, sort of writ large, but particularly among children. And they can support in a variety of ways, whether that's a monetary donation or just helping their school nutrition department perhaps with marketing practices or skills training. So there's a lot of ways that you can contribute, and if anyone's interested, I'd be more than happy to talk with them about how we can make those connections. That is the core of our job.
And they can find you if they look up No Kid Hungry Virginia.
Yes,
they will
absolutely.
find you. Claire, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond and for highlighting this very important issue and the very important mission that you're involved in.
Thank you for having me.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by the Virginia Education Association. An investment in teachers today will pay dividends tomorrow. Dignity Memorial. The Dignity Network provides professional and compassionate funeral, memorial, cremation, and cemetery services throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association for jobs, the economy, and public health. Virginia Tourism Corporation, promoting why Virginia is for lovers, lovers of wine and craft beers, the outdoors, beaches, history, music, and more. Fall in love with Virginia at virginia.org. Additional support provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.